Drop it! Drop it! Drop it!
A police officer gets called to a nursing home and then encounters a suspect who has a chainsaw. The incident does not go down well at all. It's very hard to watch. And the intent of this video is not to personally attack the officer, but to use this as a way of making points for learning and training for all police officers out there. That is why I asked National Use of Force instructor and retired law enforcement major Travis Yates to join me in covering this video. Let's dive right in.
Well, Travis Yates, I appreciate you coming back on the channel. You are a use of force instructor, and we got to talk about the situation because it was very hard to watch. What are your thoughts on just the initial encounter?
Well, I think, there's been a lot of commentary on this particular video, and I am very hesitant to criticize a responding officer when I'm getting a set here at my computer and watch it. And we all, as we watch this, we're working on what we call hindsight bias, right? We know how this ends, and so it's awful easy for us to judge the front end. But I would tell you, you have to look at human performance a lot, right? So let's take a look at the very beginning of this.
Step it up. Hey, drop the chainsaw. Drop the chainsaw. One at taser point.
Oh my God.
Hey, drop it. Drop it. Drop it. Drop it. I got one at taser.
So there's a 911 call that comes in that there's a guy with a check the well-being. There's a guy with a chainsaw cutting down trees or trying to cut down trees in front of a nursing home. So that's a very it's an odd call, but that's not necessarily a call where my spidey sense is popping up, right? And of course he gets there and somebody says, hey, I saw the guy go in the nursing home with a chainsaw. Well, now you can sort of put yourself in your shoes going, what the heck's going on here? It's right. Such an odd thing, right? And so of course, when you watch the video, nobody gives him any additional information, right? So that's really all the information the officer has when he first confronts him, and he sees him with the chainsaw. And you're right, the taser immediately comes out, and I would tell you that is unfortunately not unusual, right? We know by looking at that after the fact that that's clearly deadly force because he's about to start this chainsaw, he's about to start running around. But you got to think yourself, the officer doesn't necessarily know that. I don't have too big of a problem with the taser coming out. Now, I have a ton of problem with tasers, Scott. I've talked about this a lot. In fact, I'm old enough to know when tasers came out, and I was the guy in the room going, this is not for deadly force situations, right? And the taser rep would go, oh, of course not. Well, now, people pulling tasers out, people with guns, people with knives, we're using those as this will fix all of my problems. And we know if taser claims that they work roughly half the time, taser may get mad, but trust me, they work way less than half the time. You can just watch YouTube videos and see that.
Right.
And, but we have ingrained in our officers, right, that this thing is some all-in-one, solve all your problems. And that's the problem with procedures. See, we train procedures. We call that explicit knowledge. But what you watched in that video is tactic knowledge. There's no procedure for what you saw. And so we have to train our officers to be flexible and adapt and make those rapid decision-making. And I had no problem with the initial taser, but very quickly that turns into an obvious deadly force situation and I think the biggest issue, the biggest part in that video that people need to pay attention to is when he starts the chainsaw. And no chainsaw starts on the first pull, so he had significant time, right, to do that. You'll also notice the stress, get back to human performance, how he starts saying, drop the taser, drop the taser. He then corrects it. I mean,
hey, drop the taser. Drop the taser. Or drop it. Drop it. Drop it. Drop it.
So you're dealing with an officer, rightfully so. His heart rate's pounding, his adrenaline's pounding, blood pressure spiked. He has no idea what he's looking at here. He's never had a scenario like this. I can guarantee you that.
Right.
And so taser was an easy default, but very, very quickly we have to be able to adapt to that. And once again, I don't blame the officer. I blame leadership. I blame the environment that law enforcement is working in. I mean, we're more scared of YouTube. We're more scared of prosecutions. We're more scared of a lot of things and making the right decisions. But that's sort of what you saw at the first of that video, Scott.
Yeah, and that ran through my mind too. I thought, where is this officer? Where is he? Is he scared of getting in trouble, even if he has to stop this man? Like that thought ran through my mind, and I don't think that's too far fetched for me to think that way, because I feel for him if that's what was going through his mind. I don't know, but thank you for bringing up the part about the tasers, because I'm not a big fan of tasers either. I just saw way too many officers that were they didn't even want to train defensive tactics on their own, jiu-jitsu or whatever. But they were just like, no, I got a taser. I'm like,
well, I will tell you this, Scott. There's been no research on it, and I doubt you'll see it because there's a lot of money wrapped up from Taser and the DLJ and all these people that fund this stuff. But notice that oftentimes when tasers are used, the force is actually escalated from the taser. It was in this one, right?
Yeah.
I do a class called Seconds for Survival, which is all about human behaviors. I have 20 videos like that. I don't show them all, but I've got 20 videos on my computer right now of we use the taser because we think it's a catch-all to fix our problems. And then next thing you know, we have to use deadly force.
It's getting bad.
Well, and that's when I talk about the problem with procedures, right? We train officers, listen, de-escalate. Some people actually mandate it. Most people make it an option, but we have that in our mind, right? Because of all the environment things we just talked about. And so we think to ourselves, it's a mental model. Well, when I say drop it, he's just going to drop it. When I say drop the gun or drop the knife, they're just going to do it. It's kind of like when you get in your first pursuit. Everybody listening to this, Scott, law enforcement members are first pursuit. You almost were in shock because the first 1,000 cars you stopped just pulled over. And then all of a sudden this car's not stopping. You have to sort of go, oh, this is actually a possibility. And so the reason he's saying it 15 times, he's stuck in that OODA loop of decision making, right? The bad guy's got a decision to make. We got a decision to make. Our goal is to beat them to that decision because action beats reaction. You can't let someone point a gun. You can't let someone, if you do that, you're going to be behind that decision curve. The reason he's repeating it is he's just stuck.
Drop it, drop it, drop it, drop it. On the ground, on the ground, on the ground.
He doesn't know the next step. That's because more than likely training procedures and policy or reality-based training is every time you give a command, they're following the command and he can't wrap his brain out of it. So what he's getting there, by the way, once you just FYI, we see this all the time. Once you ask somebody once or twice, possibly 3 times, ask, make, tell, they're never going to do it. You've never seen a video where the 15th, 16th, 20th time they go, you know what? I was waiting for you to ask me 20 times to drop it. That's just not going to happen. You've got to be able to flex away from that and make a different decision. And I think it's just perfectly fine to give the early commands, but every officer needs to be in that mindset to where, okay, when this doesn't work, what do I do? That's the problem with so much of our de-escalation training. We see de-escalation as a tactic. It's not a tactic because what if it doesn't work? It takes 2 to de-escalate, right? It takes 2. And so you can't guarantee it's going to work. So when it doesn't work, what are you going to do? And there was an obvious thing to do that I want everybody to know about. But once again, I want to reiterate, listen, I'm not putting blame on this officer. Like for all I know, he's working for a boss or he's working for a supervisor that would completely lose their mind if he did what I'm about to say. But what I will tell you what could have happened, not only would have prevented a deadly force situation, it would have been completely legal under Graham v. Connor. It's what I teach each and every day around the country in this seminar called Seconds for Survival, which is sometimes you have to use force to de-escalate because that ultimately will mitigate the force.
Yes.
So I bet you can even answer that, Scott. You probably have some ideas of what could have occurred as soon as the commands didn't work. The next thing that we could have jumped to.
I was thinking rush him. I was just thinking, go for it.
And that's the big difference in the last 20 years. I mean, I saw it, that's the problem with being in law enforcement from 93 to 2023 is I saw how we used to do things and how force was mitigated. Yeah, we used force because we would go hands-on. We get them handcuffed. We would jump on them and tackle them and get them handcuffed real quick. Yeah. And it was over with. And then once we flipped to, we'll just time and distance and point the taser and give commands, we actually started using more force based on that because that force is often escalated. And that's what happened here. All right.
Yeah.
I would much rather go hands-on early, get him in custody. You got to be confident in that. That's why training is important.
At that part around 3:53 in the video, when the taser was deployed, it worked. I mean, the guy went down, but he clearly gets his composure back and the officer retreated from the room and there's people all around. Like you said, we're not attacking the officer. This is all about training procedures, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it was hard to watch him retreat because there were still a lot of people in the room. And now this man's very dangerous. And he's fortunately backups there at this point. So at this point, what do you say as a use and force instructor as to what officers can do training wise on their own? Because in my opinion, you can't rely on the department to create this consistent training. Most of them don't. So to have the mindset and the skills to keep pushing forward so you don't, quote, lose any ground or leave anyone in jeopardy to be hurt by the bad guy.
Yeah. So often we can go hands-on much, much earlier and be able to avert, more significant force. But we've seen the exact opposite, right? Because I think it's ingrained in our training. It's ingrained in the environment. I mean, Scott, major police organizations teach this, right? It's in police policy, time, distance, commands, sanctity, all these weird words, right? That confuse officers. Graham v. Connor is about a paragraph, right? But our use of force policies are 10, 15, 20 pages long. So we've really put a lot in there, a lot of procedures, right? Well, good luck remembering that 15-page policy when your heart rate's going 180 beats a minute. As an officer personally, you've got to not stop relying on the little defensive tactics training you had in the academy years ago. Trust me. I found out the hard way. I got in a little fight with a little 100-pound spotty lady late in my career, and I went, man, that didn't work too well because I would have broke her in half. And so I got in a jiu-jitsu gym as an old man, right? You've got to do something to be able to go hands-on quickly to deal with what you're seeing right here, because if you think that taser is going to help you, more often than not, it's not going to. I mean, you just watch the videos. I mean, that's one of thousands of videos that are out there where the taser does not perform like we think it will. In our mind, we think it's like television, right? That's just not going to work. And so we have to, and I wish our leaders would do this. We need to encourage our officers to go hands-on much early, right? Yeah. After you give the commands, after you get non-compliance, obviously when he begins to start it, man, we need to go. We need to go. We don't need to hesitate. Go hands-on, separate the chainsaw from him, put him in handcuffs, but you have to have confidence in that, right? And to do that, you've got to train. And you don't have to know a lot. Fortunately, we're not dealing with a lot of black belt jiu-jitsu people out there, right? So you don't have to know a lot. No,
you're right.
I mean, in fact, I would tell you a few weeks in a jiu-jitsu gym, and I've been there, pretty much puts you ahead of most bad guys you deal with, right?
Yes,
as you know, Scott, there's some pretty wicked moves you can learn just like that. Hey, if you don't have a gym near you, I mean, go online. There's a lot of online places. I'm a member of Gracie Online, and I supplement with that. But you have to do something other than thinking that the tools on your belt are going to save you, because they just simply don't. And so I do a class on de-escalation. It's never going to be picked up by the feds and a lot of grant money, because this is what I talk about, is when you see the behaviors, you see the anomalies, you see things where this is about to go bad. Well, let's not wait for it to go bad. Let's aggressively move forward, use minimum force to avoid having to use deadly force.
Amen to that. And I'm very glad we're having this interview, and we're going to get this out there. I think it'll help officers. I'm not saying disobey the law, disobey policy. No. But what you're saying is so true.
And you have to understand, Scott, Graham is important. Graham says you're judged based on what you know at the time. Right. Not what we find out later. And so thank goodness that's there. We'd probably all be in prison today if it wasn't there, because I think a lot of officers want to be perfect. That's not what Graham says, right? It wants you to be reasonable. And nobody watching that video thinks it would be unreasonable as soon as the guy wouldn't drop the chainsaw that we should not aggress him and remove the chainsaw from him and put him in some handcuffs. That's very reasonable, right? So we have to give the officers the confidence that they once had. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, this video isn't happening. I'm telling you that right now, but there's been a lot changed in the profession where we've gotten away from these basic techniques that really can help save lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of fast forward, in that video there, unfortunately, deadly force had to be used. What do you teach officers, like, whenever that is like peak stress, how to come down, how to keep job performance going? What advice do you give? Because we never know who's watching and what situation they have to get into in their career.
We're not like the military where we get to train for a year and deploy for a month, right? We're not high-level special forces folks. We're lucky to get 30, 40 hours a year. And so you have to do a lot of this yourself. But what the military does is they train on combat breathing nonstop, right? Nonstop, because and they make it where it's automatic, right? We talk about combat breathing, but when that event happens, unless you're constantly doing that the rest of your day, the rest of what you do, you're not going to automatically do that. And so there's something to that, though. And we don't have time to go into what combat breathing is. Google it, you can figure it out. But it's a way to mitigate your heart rate, to keep your heart rate down. And because that's what stress. I mean, you're not going to control tunnel vision. You're not going to be able to keep all these things from happening. That's the way it is. Alexis Artwell, obviously, it's a great book on it, Deadly Force Encounters. But we have to not only as an individual understand what combat breathing is, understand what stress does to us. So when you get the tunnel vision, don't freak out. It's just part of it. But we have to train in that way. And the only way to train to help with that is reality-based training, right? And most American law enforcement, unfortunately, does not have access to that, right? And we're talking about putting them in similar situations in a training environment using pepper balls or whatever, right? Munitions to help them with that. Most of us are not getting that level of training. That's very unfortunate because, once again, I think the people that judge us expect us to be perfect. And there's in the environment we work in, that's impossible, right? And so I think our officers feel that, which is why you see hesitation. You see hesitation of making decisions. And the hesitation is really what is harming law enforcement across the country. There's a reason, and it's not the unions and everybody else want to talk about politics and shootings are up and this is up. Of course, all that's up. But by us hesitating, we're also creating an environment to where these shootings are happening because we have a decision to make. They have a decision to make. Let's beat them to the decision. And if I can beat them to the decision and use lesser force, that's the win all the way around.
Absolutely. Travis, thank you so much for making all these very valuable points. We were able to take this incident and apply some learning aspect to it. And I hope a lot of cops do come across this video and those who are interested in getting into the profession. Very helpful information. For those who want to learn more from you and about the course you teach, where do they need to go?
Go to travisyates.org, and my survival course is actually, I do that through Blue to Go training. And what I'm going to do, Scott, I'm going to give you a link. I've got a free webinar out there that's a little 1-hour mini course on this, and they can all take that class for free. And I think that's going to help them out tremendously. Of course, the full day class, I have a full day on. I mostly do this class on the road, but I actually have in the first couple weeks of April, I have a full online class, full 8 hours classes online. It's actually it's pretty packed, but I think there's still some room in it. And just have them reach out to me, travisyates.org. I can give them the link to that, or watch that free webinar. And if you like what you see, take the full class. And I think that's going to really be able to help.